Looks like it's time for us to continue our flavor journey of Throne of Eldraine. We've got a bunch more spoilers to talk about, so let's get to it. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here again to talk about more Throne of Eldraine spoilers. Now, if you don't want to miss any of my videos or my live streams, because I do 2 live streams a day normally, at least, sometimes a third one over on Twitch. Either way, if you don't want to miss all that goodness, make sure that you join my Discord that's linked in the description, because that is how you will find out about all my videos and pretty much every live stream I do as well. If you just want to check out my videos, you can hit the subscribe button and hope for the best, because that obviously helps the channel as well. But the Discord is the real deal, my friends. Speaking of the real deal, let's get into these spoilers. The first one we're going to talk about is an awesome creature destruction spell. And I mean awesome in terms of flavor. It is 2 black, 4 colorless, Taste of Death. It is a sorcery that says each player sacrifices 3 creatures. You create 3 food tokens. The flavor text says, hone the knife and mourn the least. 3 chimes to sound the sweet grim feast. And that is a Barrow Witch incantation. Now, overall, this is definitely an interesting card. This one could be used in Commander, clearly. I mean, Commander, Brawl, that sort of multiplayer, because it's every player. Obviously, this is one of those mirrored style balance cards where it affects everybody the same way, kind of like Scheming Symmetry does. But you obviously can choose when you're going to use it to have the most advantageous situation, right? If you have no creatures out and everyone else is sacking creatures, hey, that's great. But the flavor behind this, the artwork is absolutely amazing. These apples that are carved into skulls, these represent the 3 food tokens that you get as a result of the creatures being destroyed, and they look amazing. I love all the little details, man. I love these old school candles. You can see the candle's been burning for a while. You've got the candle wax kind of like dripping down over the outer edges of the candlestick. You can see these apples reflected in the mirrory sheen on they're like being served up on a silver platter. Your enemies' heads, in a way, are being served up on a silver platter. And in the background, there is a jar with something kind of grotesque and indescribable looking in it. Maybe when I see the image more blown up. One of the problems with spoilers and these cards is that sites like MTG Picks don't have really like beautiful, high resolution, large images for me to look at. So when I'm doing spoilers on brand new cards, I have to rely on my old man eyes squinting at a tiny card to figure out exactly what I'm looking at. But this is clearly some witch's dinner table, and one of the witch's servants most likely has brought her these skull apples. I like the contrast between the bright red part of the apple peel that's still showing and the white part of the apple flesh that's been carved into the skull shape. And it makes me curious, because normally, you know, when you have an apple and you expose the white apple flesh to the air, it will end up browning. Now, is that what happens with these? Are these sort of apple skulls enchanted to maintain a certain level of white appearance, or do they yellow and brown? And I like the fact that the apples, the peels that are left on the top of the skulls, actually kind of feel like a bloody skull cap, like a red cap, or like someone who's been scalped. It adds extra dimension to this. So this is a pretty sweet card, kind of in the vein of Hex, but done in a more sacrificial style. After that, we've got Fireborn Knight. Now this one's got a crazy casting cost. It's 4 hybrid red-white mana, and I actually wasn't really expecting to see hybrid in Throne of Eldraine, but I shouldn't be surprised considering hybrid mana has become more of an evergreen kind of thing that they use all over the place in Magic. So I guess I will get accustomed to that. Now, Fireborn Knight is a 2/3 double striker. For the same amount you spend as his casting cost, 4 hybrid white and red, He gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So he pumps, but for a steep cost. But in all fairness, he also does have double strike. The flavor text says, he endured the white-hot blaze of the circle and the sweltering heat of the Iron Crag, and he emerged victorious. Now, the white-hot blaze of the circle, is that the circle of loyalty? It's an interesting thing to note that he is both white and red, and they have the two different sides. I imagine that the circle would be like the circle of loyalty that he survived the white-hot blaze of, and the sweltering heat of the Iron Crag with a weird spelling of iron would represent his red side. Now you can see him ripping down. It looks like he's kind of charging down this path that has been hewn out of the way. You've got like vines that are kind of twisting and tangled but off to the side. So there's a narrow little path, and this actually illustrates the relationship between mankind and everything else on the world of Eldraine, because the world of Eldraine is basically nature, the Fae, the wilds. They own the majority of the world, and mankind has carved out its own little chunk of the world. And so if you look at the path behind the knight, you can see that it's perfectly cleared of brambles and brush, but all around it are thick vegetation kind of encroaching from the sides. And it gives the artwork kind of a cramped feel with the thorns and everything around him. It makes him feel like he's surrounded. I really enjoy the bright blade that he has, magically infused, held up behind his head there, like he's ready to bring it down in a sweeping manner. And I like the parade ground aspect of the way that his horse looks. This white charger looks very nice. And I mean, it's a white-red card. The horse is white. It's got red decorations on it. I like the color matching. This is a nice piece of artwork overall for a fairly reasonable knight card that overall is not, this isn't something that's going to tear up standard, but it is a decent card. After that, we got Tomb Raider, kind of playing on the Tomb Raider aspect, right? This is Lara Croft Fairy. 1 blue, 2 colors for a 1/1 flying fairy. When Tomb Raider enters the battlefield, draw a card. Humans are so forgetful. Every page I steal becomes a secret they can't remember. So she's there just tearing pages out of people's books, and apparently either this is just like old knowledge that she's stealing from a book, or she also uses some kind of magic that is enacted when she steals the page that also erases it from people's minds. Now the artwork shows a tiny little fairy. I like the fact that they've got the cat back there in the background, because that gives a sense of perspective. She is tiny compared to that cat, and that cat would be viewing her the same way it would view insects or other birds to bat them around. In fact, they may have cats like this specifically in like Arvindale and other human locations on Eldraine to keep the population of tiny fey creatures like this down, the ones that can slide by their wards. And I like the red and white checkerboard floor that is being shown there that the cat's on. It makes it feel like this would actually be the castle that the previous card we just saw that knight came from. And God, this fairy's wings are incredible. This iridescent blue, she's got like dragonfly style wings with the set of 4, and they look incredible. They look fragile. They look like they're infused with magic. It almost looks like clouds. It almost looks like her wings are made of clouds infused with blue mana. So that's pretty cool. And it looks like does she have like a little cloak billowing out behind her? I'm not 100% what that is. But I like her garb too. The way that she's dressed is fantastic. And you can just see her flying off. Oh, no. Okay, what she's got, that's part of the page she's stolen, I guess. Slung over her shoulder, looking almost like a satchel of stolen goods. So overall, not an incredible card, but very nice to look at. Then we've got Knight's Charge. 1 black, 1 white, 1 colorless. It's an enchantment that says whenever a knight you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain a life. And you can pay 8 mana, sacrifice Knight's Charge, return all knight creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. And the flavor text says, by hoof, wing, or paw, for the realm! And that is Sir Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale. Now, this is a card that specifically comes from one of the Brawl decks. Obviously, the Knight Brawl deck. The flavor behind it is very solid. The idea of just these knights on a crusade, the first sort of triggered ability that makes your opponent lose a life and you gain a life for each knight, as that's a very white-black feel. We've seen a lot of cards in a similar vein to that recently, and it makes sense with the Knight's Charge. It's almost like intimidation tactics. And the 8 cast ability, where you sack the enchantment, that is the full-on Knight's Charge, where all the knights are charging, and through their power, they even pull the spirits of departed knights who came before them back to life, and not a semblance of life, not spectral knights, but back to full existence. And I absolutely love that on Eldraine, there are all kinds of different fantastical mounts. If you take a look in the artwork, you can see a number of them. At the forefront, you have a knight who is riding a rearing lion. You've got gigantic eagles soaring by. You've got horses in the background. You can see there are unicorns. There's so much in terms of mounts, and I love it. It adds a big fantasy feel to it, and this is a fun card for Knights Tribal. And I like the way that the card, when you first put it out for cheap, you end up getting a nice little benefit, but then later on it can be a completely win you the game. And that's what a Knight's Charge should be, when you come in with your legion of knights and just crush your opponent. That is some nice flavor. The next card we're going to talk about, I really, really like this one, boys. 2 blue, 4 colors for a 5/6 flyer. As long as you control 4 or more artifacts, Shimmer Dragon has hexproof. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, draw a card. The flavor text says, the Indigo Dragon gladly traded a bit of its hoard for everlasting moonlight. It's like a fairy tale. It's like a fairy tale. This dragon is trading part of its treasure, and treasure means a lot to a dragon, for everlasting moonlight. And you can see the dragon just staring up at the night sky, transfixed in a state of somewhat awe and meditation. I love it. I love this artwork. There's just something about it. The color of the dragons are fantastic, or I should say the dragon, not the dragons. The color of the dragon is fantastic. The idea that it would be willing to give up part of its treasure for something to stare at, it's like it's a dragon that instead of just caring about regular earthly treasure, it cares about something more. It treasures being able to see a star-filled night sky. And that just adds an extra dimension to it. There's actually a cool little part of the Throne of Eldraine book involving 2 dragons that are trying to pull a castle off of the ground into the sky using frost magic as they circle around it. That, I don't know, I really like the Throne of Eldraine dragon concepts. I love this dragon. I love the fact that he's sitting there beside a body of water, just happily staring up at this night sky. And there's something about it. There's something about the restful way that he's relaxing. He's even got his tail dipped into the water. Have you ever sat by the water side with your feet dangling into the water for the sensation of the change, where it's like you can feel the difference between your feet in the cool water, the air along your skin, especially where as the water moves up and down, there's a part of your skin that is moistened from the water, but is above the waterline. So when the breeze hits that, you actually have a sensation of 3 different feelings at once on different parts of your leg. And it's just kind of part of the contemplative experience of staring out over the water and thinking about life. I don't know if you guys are like me, so I don't know if you've actually had this experience, but that's what this makes me think of. Him having his tail in the water like that makes me think of myself sitting at the water's edge thinking about life with my feet dangling in the water. And that is a nice feeling indeed. Moving on, we've got Corridor Monitor. Now this is from Castle Vantress. 1 blue, 1 colors for a 1/4 artifact construct. When this creature enters the battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. Castle Vantress has no locks on its doors, but interlopers rarely make it past the foyer. Now, it's a little bit weird because they call this a Corridor Monitor, and it untaps an artifact or creature you control, so it's kind of like, I guess the idea is supposed to be that it will rouse and create an alarm. I like the fact that it's a lantern that's given legs to wander around. The keyhole is the symbol of Vantress. Vantress is the castle of knowledge. Vantress is where you go if you wish to consult with the magical mirror that has all answers. But that magical mirror will only treat with you. It will only communicate with you if you can bring it information it does not already possess. And that mirror features in the Throne of Eldraine novel in a very interesting way that I'm not going to reveal here, because me and Aetherhub, currently known as Trick Room, who may become Twincast, are working on a collaboration lore set of videos talking about the book. So I'm trying not to reveal much about the book until we have an opportunity to actually go into it together. Now, the Corridor Monitor is a fairly underwhelming card. It's serviceable, but it's okay, you've got an animated lantern, that's cool. You've got the light beam that blasts out of it, which presumably is what awakens individuals to come and protect the castle so they don't make it in. But other than that, it's an underwhelming card. The flavor's cool, power level, meh. Now, the next card we're going to talk about actually feels like it has a decent power level, and it's very flavorful and fun. Banish into Fable. Fable, not Fable. 1 blue, 1 white, 4 colors. Instant. When you cast a spell from your hand, copy it if you control an artifact, then copy it if you control an enchantment. You may choose new targets for the copies. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. You create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. So the artwork here, the concept is you are literally banishing people into being legends, into being stories. And that's why you see in this artwork 3 people, and that's representing you getting to cast it when you have 3 targets. I do like that. I like it when a card numerically and visually represent the same thing. So you can banish up to 3 things into Fable, and these 3 people have been banished into a painting. And you can see the way that they've got their hands pressed. It's like they're trying to escape. The dude in the middle has one hand pressed against what would be like the glass window frame, the viewing port for us to see through. And he's got one hand lifted back like he's pounding on it. And you have the knight on the right hand side with both of his hands up trying to push through. And you have the lady on the other side again trying to, instead of pushing out through the front, she's pushing off to the side. So they're all trying different angles to a degree to try and push their way out of here. They're trying to bang and let that individual. It's almost like that knight is banging on this at the same time as that guardsman is walking by in an attempt to say, "Hey, we're here, we're here." Imagine that, being trapped in a painting and nobody can tell that you're in there. You've been magically ensorcelled into a painting. That is very, very high fantasy. The idea of being banished into a painting, something like that, is very, very cool. And it requires magic to free them, hence the recasting. And if you want to, you can even view the creature that's walking by the painting as the 2/2 knight that would be created by casting the spell. So that's not necessary that you think of it that way. You can totally look at it from another perspective. But I really enjoy this artwork. I think the knight looks great with his blue, dark blue flowing cloak and the shiny burnished armor. He's got like a watchman's pole, but he also has a giant sword at his waist as well. And I like the fact that the people who are banished into the artwork are also shown unarmed. You can see that none of them have weaponry. And when you contrast that to the weaponry that is carried by the knight, it makes them feel like essentially like their power has been neutered, like they've been nerfed, right? And that's a good feel for someone who's been banished into Fable. You no longer have any ability to affect the real world, and perhaps if they did have blades, they would be able to cut their way out of the painting. But I like that they're shown unarmed. I think that it adds a level to the flavor of the card. Then we've got, speaking of weapons, Steel Claw Lance. 1 black, 1 red, equipped creature gets +2/+2, equip a knight for 1, and equip overall for 3. Now this is an